So, John, tell me more about your project. I'm super excited. I understand the question. It's like to answer the question: what if internet was invented before democracy? Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So, tell me more.
So the project's called Democracy Squared. It's been like kind of playing in the back of my mind for quite a few years now. But the essential premise is so I do a lot of organizational consultancy, and there are some amazing models around the way businesses are organizing themselves. But the context I don't think was ever there before for that to be possible on a huge scale. But now we obviously have the technology to do that. And it's just, we're seeing like the world move at this crazy pace, but yet the systems that we have, like governments, are really centralized. We tend to vote in like, in quite shallow ways almost, and very irregularly, like every 5 years. But that seems at odds with all of the shifts that the internet has created around transparency, around iteration. So I don't know what the solution is, but I know that there are some amazing projects around the world that might be pointing towards like a new, deeper form of democracy, or perhaps not democracy, I don't know, but definitely a new way of organizing society at large, basically. And I think we have the world context to do that now.
So what is it going to be? Is it going to be a book, a movie? So again, the name is Democracy Square.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a book. And I have a load of views and context that give me an idea of where I think it's going. But in order to do it justice, I guess, I think I want to spend a lot of time researching people who are really doing real things. So not just theories behind democracy and the internet, but examples of real life projects that have happened. So before it becomes a book, I think it's going to become a podcast. So my aim is to try and spend time with like these amazing makers and thinkers and extract all of they know from their brains.
So before we come back to the what, tell me more about the why. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
I mean, you.
Yeah. I get really triggered by the idea of anything of unfairness in general. I think I'm the kind. My friend once said that I'm allergic to authority, which I think is true. So I'd say like freedom and equality are like the two things. But when there's something like that missing, I almost like get physically reactive to it. So those are like definitely the values that drive this, and fundamentally, I don't think we live in a democracy at all. Like, I think I have very little impact. So like I was saying, my decisions are very shallow, very removed, very indirect, and very rare. And then if I look further into like the workplace, people don't vote for their bosses, or people don't vote for even local policies in their areas most of the time. So I get like a little bit rattled about that. And I now think that I can understand why that was the case before we had technology. Things took longer. I think we needed to centralize things in order to scale some sort of conformity in society. But now I think we've got everything we need to change that, to make people truly empowered and in control of their lives, basically.
So at that stage of the project, what do you think are the 2 or 3 main disruptive technology or events that are going to change the way we look at democracy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the technologies, maybe it's more the principles that I think are underpinning this. So I think democracy will, for the most part, become more direct. We were having this conversation yesterday. I don't know if it'll be direct for everything, but it'll certainly be more direct. I think the internet, so there's a project in Argentina called Democracy OS, where people can give their view on specific policies all the time, which basically shows that the idea of a representative making decisions for everyone isn't always necessary. So I think that's really interesting. The second one is the frequency of decisions, but also of deciding how we decide. I think that's going to be really interesting. So we have constitutions that have been around for ages. Not only are they not respected, but they were invented in a world which just doesn't exist anymore. So I think we're going to move towards an almost like fluid form of decision making, which is constantly changing. So like wiki technology is really interesting for that. And the other one is definitely blockchain. Like I think it'll allow us to decentralize decision making without it being corruptible, hopefully. I mean, it is possible. possible to corrupt these things. Of course, there'll always be innovators on the other side of the freedom fence. But yeah, more things in place at the moment.
And if you had to make a prediction, I know how difficult it is. How and when do you think the first changes will appear, or maybe they already are around us? Like you gave the example of Argentina.
Yeah.
How and when?
Yeah. When, like you say, there's lots of small things happening. So I gave the Argentinian example. In Iceland, they crowdsourced their constitution. In Estonia, they've created this e-residency platform so that it can kind of become a country without borders. You have all these amazing things happening in small test beds. So when it will scale, I don't know, or when these different pieces of the puzzles will come together, I don't know. How things will change. I'm hoping, at least, maybe, I don't know, sometimes I don't know whether it's my prediction or whether it's just my naive hope for humanity. I think there'll be more of a distinction between what decisions are made for, say, a country or for a local area. I think we're going to have a lot more frequent decision making. Like I can imagine a world where we wake up every day and make a small decision on something very close to us. I think that will be really, really interesting. And I think we might end up in a situation maybe like Switzerland, where the cantons have a lot more impact and power on their own community, and then when they're success stories, that can spread across a whole country. And when there aren't success stories, those stories die anyway. So I think we'll end up with a world that is. I like the metaphor of a driverless car. When a driverless car crashes, all cars learn that lesson. And I hope that we end up in a situation in countries where when a local area tries something, when something happens there, the whole of the country can learn from that lesson. So I think it's definitely going to move towards something very, very dynamic. How exactly, I don't know. And then if we go really far into the future, like I wonder if we'll have countries in the way that we have as formal organizations or nation states. I have this like slightly sci-fi obsession with the idea that maybe we'll organize ourselves almost around hashtags in the future. So based on our beliefs or values or whatever, but not so much geographically. I don't know if those kind of ideas might start emerging. You might belong to a local physical community as well as a virtual hashtag community in the world that you belong to. I don't know.
And what would be your advice to anybody who want to be part of the change? Like if you meet somebody for the first time and he or she is totally excited by your ideas or have his or her own ideas, what would be your advice?
Yeah, so the way I'm trying to create this project is, so I said there's going to be a podcast, a book, and I just want that to be the beginning of a conversation. Like I definitely don't have the answer and won't by the time I've written it all either. So the next step's the most important one. That's to create some sort of community. So I'd like to create a bit of an open discussion online, so one that anyone can join. Then I'd also hope that people can start their own sort of meetups, or ideally like prototyping or hacking type events, because I think this stuff will start to happen when real things get made and are then tried out. Maybe sometimes it'll be like officially tried out in like governmental situations or municipalities. Other times it might be for organizations, charities, communities in that way. But I think that constant making, it's makers, I think, that change the world the most. And I'm not a huge maker, but hopefully I can create a community that will make the makers join in on something like this.
Another question, you mentioned organizations like companies, the workplace. How can you, obviously, as you mentioned also, this is not the best democratic places. How do you see the difference? Because if on one side our political democracy are evolving, like you said, and on the other side the workplace is not moving, what will happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I think I tend to polarize organizations, and I describe them, as people in suits, like being old school. I don't know if there's also some incredible examples of the opposite. So I actually think that what we can learn most from small organizations doing interesting things. So if I think of the lean movement or the agile movement or the teal movement or the sociocratic movements, whatever, I think all of those organizational principles, which come from manufacturing at first, and then probably software engineering more nowadays. I think those give us all the principles for what society could look like. And the main one being that it's not a static structure. So the way France or England has been set up as a country has been the same for a pretty long time now. But these kind of organisations are working in a way where rather than having to reorganise, like break the old structure and build a new one, they're starting to develop models where the structure's kind of always, people talk about organisms instead of organisations. So if we think of like all the stuff happening to the planet, whether it's environmentally, or if we see of like, increasing inequality or divisions, I think we're going to start to hopefully move towards countries which are also just constantly tweaking. It's like opening your iPhone and you've got an update for a bug fix. I'd like to see a society that's constantly fixing bugs rather than trying to solve big issues every ages.
My last question. You've been working on these ideas and on this project for some time already. You've been thinking about all these things from your early age, as you said. Is there any big thing that we don't see, that you see coming? You mentioned different technologies, you mentioned different ideas, but is there like the elephant in the room that I don't see, and most people don't see, that you would tell us?
Maybe I'm not seeing the elephant either. I don't know. I think maybe the thing that crosses my mind is that for all the we see technology, we see shifts in society, we see shifts particularly in organisations, but I don't think we truly always understand. And I like definitely keep catching myself, like, for me physically as Jon, what do these changes mean? I think I'm having to unlearn a load of mental models and preconceptions I have about how the world works, that are like totally shifting, and so that's gonna, for me, really create some. I don't know what's gonna happen, but we're at a shift where human beings are having to evolve because of the world around us a lot more. And I see that like spiritually, philosophically, this notion that we live in like nanny states almost, where everything's done for us. But if the internet empowers us, it gives us both freedom and responsibility. So I think we've almost got this technology which is making everyone free and responsible, but we have a belief system which is that we're not free and we're not responsible. So there's going to be, I don't know what will happen, but that feels like a clash in society that we're going to have to just develop ourselves. So it's great for me to talk about developing a new democracy, but the thing for me and everyone to remember every day, I think, is to develop myself for this new stuff that's happening, basically.
Wow, totally exciting and fascinating. I can't wait for the next stages. So that's Democracy Squared.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jon.
Thank you so much. Cheers.